I think this is just the MNM special happening right here. Like the Evelyn pick, like Candy's an incredibly good Evelyn, and his Evelyn is actually terrifying. I would not want to play against it, but I think this at this point, this is just like, I think this is appropriate from MNM. Like we've got lanes that are going to crush you. We're going to play super up in your face. Evelyn's going to be everywhere. Every single lane is going to push, and we're just going to roll over you in the early game. Like that's what this comp does, which is, I think, a good response to the situation.
With like disregarding MNM's draft completely, when you look at Xenex's draft, in my opinion, this Xenex draft is the best draft they've done all series.
Oh yeah, definitely.
This is just them picking comfort, realistically, and it's them actually wanting. But this is correct, as in they've got Olaf, who's super powerful in the early game and can get lanes ahead that he chooses to get ahead. You've got Rumble, whose mid-game spike is stronger than probably any champion in the game right now, and deals more damage than anybody in the entire, like all champions in League of Legends from all roles. He does more damage than for like in competitive play at least. You've got the utility of Ashe, which is present throughout all the game past 6, and then you've got a scaling control mage in Victor. So there is no real lull where the team can do nothing at a certain point in the game. Every single point of the game is covered by something. And they can do something at every single point. So whether there's an early Infernal, they can contest it. If there's late game team fights around Baron, they can contest them. If there's if it's going to go long and they're looking for Elder Drake fights, there's points to the team that can fight for Elder Drake. If they're looking to contest jungle areas in the early game, Olaf can do that. So they've got all the tools within this comp to actually win the game, which is the first time you can really say that in this whole series. And by this time, mentality is so low or poor that it actually doesn't matter what champions you pick anymore. But I think if this is game 1 and those champions are drafted, you've got a much better chance of what you gave yourself. And so that was really sad to see that it came out too late, this kind of thing.
So it's sort of more than picking champions that are like famous for good, like famously work together well, like the Lulu Cogmore. It's like picking champions where you don't have, we can't do anything for this massive window of time.
Yeah. And the pressure is like the pressure on who has to carry this draft is so split this game. Whereas the last 2 games has literally been like, Sankas, please help us. Like every single one of these lanes can pop off.
In game 1, if Sankas doesn't do anything from level 1 to 5, and if Caitlyn never gets that unnatural lead, then Xenex are pretty much guaranteed lost. And in game 2, if they don't, if they're unable to stay in the game for 35 minutes, they've pretty much guaranteed lost. Whereas this game's different. This game, if Ashe falls behind, it doesn't matter because Rumble can do damage in these mid-game fights. If Rumble falls behind, then it doesn't matter because you still got the pick utility and the scaling mid-lane mage. So there's still, like, even if you have issues with it regards to in-game in this comp as Xenex, there's still many points which like hold up the rest of the comp. The comp can still function if something goes wrong, which is something that hasn't been present in the previous 2 drafts.
Okay, and then if I can just bring it back to the last draft. So when Xenex first picked the Lulu, did MNM first rotation the Kate, or they had the Kate to play against it? Is there
they
they
drop through because they banned Dash and Jhin.
So for the same thing then, is that not a better idea for Xenex to try and get a strong bot lane to bully the Lulu plus whatever they're going to pair with it, or was that more like that specific draft?
So I think Gash has like a pretty decent matchup into Caitlyn, and she's actually like the hardest ADC bully there is early game, and I think that this is probably planned from Xenex, and like, okay, we need to pull out something special, we need to pull out something like different, which is where the Bard comes in, and I really like that because Prosper's been actually pretty good for this whole series. Like in game 1, him ulting in on Tahm Kench was basically the only chance they had of getting back into the game, like quite frequently, and he actually did pull the trigger on it. So I really like the idea that they let the Bard drop through, we take the Karma ban, fine, they waste a ban, they don't get an extra ban for Backland, who's going to get a counter pick in mid lane, and then we pull out the Bard. I really like that lane.
Yep, no, I 100% agree. There's playmaking from everyone on this team with regards to this game. Like, there's things that the whole team can do, but I think the hardest one is for Backland. He hasn't had a chance to show a level of skill within this series.
I think that's the only pick that I don't like.
That he's done so well.
And
Yeah, he's the Victor pick.
do you think, because obviously MNM were dumping at some points like 4 bans onto him, is that something where you think, right, should we just get something he's good at earlier on, or if you take away the kata, is it more just like?
I think MNM did a very good job of like nullifying what he can do within these games. They've obviously spent a fair bit of time looking at what his champ pool is, because he hasn't pulled out anything like Talon or
Syndra. Like he's had so many chances to play.
And he hasn't pulled out these champs. So I think he must have been playing 4 or 5 champs like only in preparation for this, and it's been way too easily scouted by M&M, and they've literally made him revert to like a standard scaling control mage every single game. And him doing that, especially alongside M&M being aggressive in the early parts of the game when against scaling comps, has prevented him ever being able to use his pick to like its fullest potential.
Yeah, I think Victor is one of the, well, is the only pick in this draft that I think is questionable. I think one thing they maybe could have done differently if they wanted to is they actually, like, I don't think that M&M is going to ban the Olaf realistically. I think that's such an, like, unless it's like a well-known, like, Candy hates this matchup and doesn't want to play Evelyn into Olaf, which I don't think is the case because they're willing to blind pick the Evelyn, then I don't think that you need to actually pick the Olaf there. What I think would have been really cool is if Xenex had locked in like a Syndra or an Ari at that point. And then there wouldn't have been like a Tom Kent Chancellor or something like that. And if they picked Shen, they would have lost the top lane anyway. So I think like an assassin pick instead of the Olaf.
I mean, as it turns out, they could have got the Syndra anyway, couldn't they? And then the Syndra as a counter.
Yeah, I think Syndra would have been like really good here as well.
They could have just outright picked Syndra where Olaf is, and then banned out 2 mid laners that he didn't want to play Syndra against, and then actually put himself on the other side of it and have a favourable matchup for himself.
Yeah, I think it would have been a better draft if they'd lent towards backland.
Yeah, but I think this draft overall, in terms of the power curve of the draft, is like the best draft of all the games. But realistically, at this point, after stuff like that Baron steal and struggling in the first 2 games when they thought they would probably go in with this, because I spoke to both teams before the games and both seemed really confident that they would probably beat the other team by 3-0, 3-1, and I genuinely think Xenex thought that they would do that, or they could do that, and when it didn't happen, I think mentalities like really dipped by the time this came around and it was game 3.
Okay, do we want to quickly touch on M&M's draft before we finish this? Is there anything that you guys want to say about that? So obviously the Eve makes everything slightly strange, and if it's going to snowball, it snowballs hard.
The Evelyn doesn't have to be picked there. Like, there's 0 chance they ban the Evelyn, and if they do ban the Evelyn, pick the Renekton there. Renekton is actually the Renekton. Renekton's actually one of the only good matchups into Rumble. Like, Xenex banning away Nautilus and Kled is really bad if you ask me. Like, you know, like, okay, if you don't want to get cheesed by the Kled Evelyn comp, then fine. But if you play Rumble, you don't care if the other guy picks Nautilus. Like, Rumble has the push matchup in that for so long. But Renekton is one of the only like actual 50-50 matchups that Rumble has. So I would much have preferred if M&M had taken the Renekton instead of the Evelyn, or if Xenex had banned the Renekton instead of the Nautilus.
Okay.
Yeah.
So is that it then on this draft?
I think so, pretty much. I think Xenex have the better chance of winning this game if it goes into mid game, because Rumble will become probably more potent than Renekton, barring Renekton doesn't gain a lane lead, which he could well do with the Evelyn. But it's very much about how Olaf plays around Eve and preventing her from getting random cheeses off, and then Ash's utility, Ash Bard and Rumble's kind of pick utility, should make a stronger mid game for Xenex. So realistically, it's like preventing Eve doing stuff in the early game, letting lanes get past. Like, so this Caitlyn lane will probably bully to an extent. So you've just got to take 10 CS leads maybe around the map, and then look to fight around neutrals in mid game. That's what they give. But I think Renekton snowballs uncontrollably, right? He gets to get triple kill for TP or something.
We're not gonna break this game down, right?
No, I don't think so. After like 5 minutes, this game's over.
Yeah. So for anyone who didn't watch, Renekton gets a triple or
triple
kill?
Yeah, I think he teleports bot lane.
He gets a triple kill.
Yeah.
Xenex tries to force a gank and they overcheck, and they all get punished.
Yeah, they get
I
TP
think
flanked on.
I think in terms of draft, like one of the edges that MNM has in this game, obviously Evelyn is a big like unknown factor, and people just aren't used to playing against that. The other thing is the Ari. Like I think if MNM play properly around mid lane, then the Ari can snowball really hard. Like I do think they have very good lanes for being aggressive and very good lanes to play Evelyn with, because all of these lanes are lanes that typically push mega hard. I think that the Ari like should have like a fair bit of push pressure and a fair bit of kill pressure over the Victor early on, which is a big factor. Which is again is why I would have preferred it to be.
I think that's something that MNM have done better throughout the series than Xenex as well, is that they the synergy between the junglers they pick and the lanes that they have works much better for MNM than Xenex have considered. And their ability to, like, for instance, Lee Sin in the last game, there was like no windows where he could do anything. And in game one, it was very obvious windows where Elise had to be in certain places. So again, it's very predictable and very like hard to execute. Whereas Eve here has like everywhere she can pressure, and making it very difficult for Xenex to know exactly what she's going to do and where she's going to play, and then it gives kind of more options about how they're going to win this game.
Yeah, and compare like last game the Lee Sin with Kog'Maw, Lulu, like all losing lanes to Rengar, Camille, Orianna. Like the Rengar has so many opportunities.
Yeah, exactly.
Cool. So I think that's done then.
Yeah.